you a business owner looking for real advice and input? You're in the right place. From concept to launch to growth, funding, and beyond. Welcome to Startup Hustle with your hosts. One once sold a business for $150 million. The other, the author of $1 Million Bedroom. Here are your hosts of Startup Hustle, Matt DeCoursey and Matt Watson.
1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1. 'Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it.
And we're back. Another episode of Startup Hustle. Matt DeCoursey here with Matt Watson. Welcome back, Matt.
What's going on, man?
I'm just wondering if you're going to stay awake for this episode. I believe you just traveled back from the other side of the world just in time to make it for today's show.
Just in time, and my brain kind of hurts.
Your brain's been killing me for a long time. So, and you know, your face, does your face hurt?
Yeah.
Because it's killing me as well. Yeah. So sorry, I couldn't pass on that one. It's like isn't that like the
killing you with my beauty?
Yes. Speaking of which, before we get started, today's episode of Startup Hustle is brought to you by Fullscale.io, where we can help you build a software development team quickly and affordably. And as Matt mentioned, our beautiful faces are on the Startup Hustle YouTube channel. Thank you for all those that have made it over there to subscribe. With us today, we've got Sumeet Maniar, who's the CEO of WellBrain. Sumeet, is this true?
Yes.
That's good.
Definitely.
So, and I'll give you a little added intro. So those of you listening, you know, I like it when you're interactive. So whether you're listening through your phone or you have a browser nearby, go to WellBrain. That's 2 L's, wellbrain.io. Sumeet, tell us what you guys do at WellBrain.
Yes. So WellBrain was co-founded by 3 practicing physicians who were pain doctors. And several years ago, they noticed their patients weren't getting better with traditional opiate-based treatments. So they basically decided and figured out to offer a platform which enables physicians to use an array of different types of services, such as customized guided meditations and accelerated pre-authorization for neuromodulation and other types of therapies. So what WellBrain is, it's an iPad app that enables physicians to prescribe from an array of different types of solutions to help treat their patients better, fight chronic pain, save lives, and address the opiate epidemic.
Matt, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Can you please describe neuromodulation to our listeners?
Yeah, it's a video game.
I mean, wow. What is neuromodulation?
So neuromodulation is an interesting, just think of it as electrical therapy that...
See, video game.
Yeah. So basically, you can get implantable outpatient procedures either in your spine or peripherally, called peripheral nerve stimulation. And so physicians will employ these in order to reduce pain for patients.
Let's see.
So it's basically sending electrical stimulation to your brain, basically, and then it kind of absolves the pain that way.
I'm basically picturing the Matrix when they plug Neo into like all those different
Dude,
things.
I wish.
Yeah.
I know Kung Fu.
Right.
I want to know Kung Fu.
I wish I could go to Cebu that way.
Yeah.
Just like,
I could just stay here and they just tap me in and I show up.
Yeah.
well, we did recently have an augmented reality company in, and they're part of now you are here today. You're actually from San Francisco.
Yep.
Where it's probably also cold because
It's always cold there.
I know, I don't get
Even
it.
in the summer.
I know.
The summer is the worst time to visit.
We were there recently for TechCrunch.
Yep.
We went out to just kind of go check some stuff out, and every time I go to San Francisco, I'm enlightened and terrified at the same time.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah. So
I traveled through there in August on my way to the Philippines, and I'm at the airport switching terminals. I'm like, holy shit, it's cold here, and it's August.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, what the hell's going on?
But you go 5 miles away and it's like 90 degrees. So
That's
it's
so
like
weird.
microclimates.
And we'll get into some of that, some San Francisco stuff in a bit. But you're part of Launch KC's health tech cohort. And with that, we've had quite a few of your classmates, as we'll call them.
Right.
But the health tech has top level partner of Newterra Capital, local VC fund here in Kansas City. But first off, welcome back to Kansas City.
Yep.
And I believe later today, I'm going to see the demo not only of that your company is going to produce, but the other companies. So that seems like a good place to start, like with the backstory of how you created WellBrain and then maybe what brought you to Launch KC.
Yeah, sure. So WellBrain, like I explained earlier, so we had 3 co-founding pain physicians. They were trained at Harvard, Stanford, the Mayo Clinic, and they had about 30,000 patients. And what was happening was they were noticing all their patients were coming in saying, "Doc, I don't care about this visit. Just write me another script for opiate prescriptions." And they're like, "No, we're not going to do this." And so they started researching, and through research and through a TED conference down in Long Beach, they came across a researcher, and then they ended up doing a 2-year clinical study with Buddhist monks in India, those who practice mindfulness and those who are in chronic pain, and found the evidence was off the charts to address issues such as anxiety, depression, and other factors. And they're like, you know what? Why can't we offer this for our patients here? So that became the genesis of WellBrain. And so it's interesting why I got into digital health as well. So I came from a gaming background in video games, and that's all about selling an addiction. And I thought about it, and I've been doing all these capitalistic things, and it's like, this may be an opportunity to address a socio problem and be capitalistic as well. So that's why I had the interest of joining WellBrain. So I was approached by the lead investor of WellBrain, and that's how I joined the team and got together with them. And I've been there for 3.5 years. And basically, to answer your second question with respect to Kansas City, that came an interesting opportunity. So my experience, I've been worldwide. I've worked in tier 2 cities, tier 1 cities, all over the place. And it was very interesting when Nutera and Launch KC approached me and said, "Hey, you should really consider our accelerator." And at first I wasn't sure about it because I'd been approached by so many accelerators. But what I really liked was what WellBrain is doing. We're nationwide, and we're trying to address issues both in rural, urban, and suburban areas. And Kansas City has a good nexus of that. And then when I saw what Nutera has and the whole healthcare ecosystem that you guys have set up in Kansas City, it made a good sense. So that's why we applied, and then we went through the process, and we've been here now for 10, 11 weeks.
So I'm curious, and this is just informational.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think of Kansas? Have you been to Kansas City before?
Yes, actually, I've had to work in Jeff City for 6 months before when I was based in Chicago for Anderson Consulting back in my programming days. So I had to spend 6 months there, and we'd sometimes have to spend several weekends or weeks in Kansas City. This is like 20 years ago, but the airport hasn't changed.
No, it hasn't, but the city has.
Yeah.
The city has. 20 years ago, our downtown area was remarkably different.
Right.
But I think that a lot of people I've talked to that are from wherever end up being kind of pleasantly surprised with what they find here. I think there's a little more tech and other stuff going on than people expect. Did you find the same thing?
Yeah. I was actually quite surprised, and even to the point, my wife got excited, so she spent like 4 or 5 days out here. We checked out all the areas like Power and Light, Creative, or whatever that arts district is, and South Westport, and a lot of interesting areas. And food is amazing too, right?
That doesn't hurt.
A lot of good restaurants here and everything. So
if you like barbecue, you're in the right place.
Yeah.
By the way, things that people don't say often. My wife is excited to go to Kansas City. I mean, I'm from here. Matt is as well, and we accept KC for what it is. You know, like we're like the 25th biggest media market. I mean, it is what it is. But at the same time, there's a lot of advantages to operating a business here, especially when you talk about your hometown of San Francisco, where I just read an article yesterday. The average 1-bedroom apartment is now $3,700.
Yep. We're in rent control, so we're locked in at like $2,400. But if we were to move out and move back in, it'd be by $4,000.
Yeah, and
that's insane.
I mean, if you live in a city that requires rent controlled districts.
Yep.
$2,400 a month gets you a pretty nice house here.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, like really nice. I mean, you live in a 5,000-6,000 square foot house for that.
Yeah. It's just beyond crazy. It's just.
So with that, how is that? You know, you're a startup. You guys have been at this for 3.5 years. Is that correct? And I believe you've raised $1.7 million in funding.
Mm-hmm.
So that sounds like a lot of money until you start thinking about how expensive it can be to operate out in the valley. Like, how are you guys walking that tightrope?
So we're walking that tightrope by having distributed expenses. So we've minimized our employees out there. Eventually we'll scale up, but we'll probably have our technical stuff probably somewhere in the United States, but definitely not there. Maybe 1 or 2 guys, but then the rest of the team, or it could be overseas. And right now we're managing most of our tech development is overseas in Europe and India, as I explained earlier, like Latvia. So it's a little bit distributed, but right now we're a lean team, 3 employees here. We have several pain physicians who are active advisors to us, and then we just need to expand on the sales fronts. But yeah, I hear you, because in the sense of minimizing labor expense and everything, it's unless you raise a lot of capital, then you can do it viably in San Francisco, but it doesn't make sense.
It never makes sense to hire software developers for $200,000 a year.
Right, that's true.
Or more.
Doesn't make
shit, dude, 200's cheap. When I was looking at numbers like 250.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And the thing is as much as having people in the same room with you can be a benefit. I mean,
right.
as a company that deals primarily in helping people build remote development teams, part of our model does really require you having someone local.
Right.
But with that, man, it's interesting. It's about once a month. There's a new article comes out, and it's company XYZ moves, relocating either a significant portion. It usually be like locating their operation to Kansas City, and then there's like a little byline. They will leave a small presence, which means like an office with 2 people in it, probably in San Francisco. And that's probably because the VCs are like, don't go too far.
Well, it's like Google and Facebook is gobbling up the city and pushing out companies like Gap and even Levi's and McKesson, which was headquartered there. They're moving 80-90% of their staff. I forgot where, Dallas.
Yeah.
And they're keeping a small presence. So it's
even having a real, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I just still don't know.
Everybody's moving to like Portland and Salt Lake City and
used to be Austin,
Phoenix and Vegas, and they're moving.
Some of those places are getting pricey too. Yeah. Austin's really expensive now. It wasn't. Yeah. That was, I'm from here, but lived a bunch of other places and was in Indianapolis for a while. And before we moved back to Kansas City, we had a B option, and that was Austin. And we're kind of looking at it. And
it's too hot.
Yeah. I mean, there's, it's weird because Austin and Kansas City, like structurally, are very similar. They have a lot of the same things. Austin's just bigger, and it's in Texas. So if you want to walk around with a pistol on your hip, you can do that in Kansas too. So,
well, it's funny. I wasn't used to that. Like some of these bars, it says leave your weapon in your car or something. They have a sticker or something like that. I hadn't seen.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people are really walking around like that. I think that's required by law. Probably shouldn't give the impression to when I travel overseas, people will ask, "Oh, if you're from Kansas, are there cowboys there?" I'm like, "Really?" Like, I live in a city, man.
A lot of cows, not a lot of cowboys.
I live in a suburb. I don't see cows.
So getting back to your guys' service. So if I'm a physician, what exactly did they use it for, and kind of what is your business model?
Yeah. Okay. So what it is, envision an iPad app and also a smartphone app. And the iPad app, what we've done is coupled with various diagnostics that physicians can longitudinally track a patient's well-being, movement, anxiety, depression. And those components themselves are reimbursable through insurance. And so we help physicians track that. So when you come into the physician office, and let's say you're a chronic pain patient, you'll get the iPad, you'll do these diagnostics, and there are questions like
the patient uses your app as well.
Yeah, the patient
fills out some questionnaires or surveys.
Right, and then surveys in the iPad, and then they get an introductory video to WellBrain, where they are taught a deep breathing exercise. Kind of does all the work for the physician, so the physician doesn't have to explain what this is. And what happens is usually the medical assistant will configure the iPad, walk away. Patient will go through these questions, then go through the video. Then they'll opt in and get put in their email address, and then get a link to use on their Android or iOS device at home. And then physician can track those activities. And by the time they're done with that, the physician comes in and asks the patient, "Oh, what do you think about WellBrain?" It's like, "Oh, by the way, we're going to start off. I'm going to write less of a prescriptive on the opiates," and then the conversation starts from there. Starting from there, that's one aspect. The other aspect is sometimes when I mention about neuromodulation, those same diagnostics that we do, we help the provider do what's known as accelerated pre-authorization approval with insurance companies for these outpatient procedures. So if a physician thinks a patient is a good candidate for this outpatient electrical stimulation or neuromodulation, I should say, sometimes it takes several months to get approval. And WellBrain itself acts as a proxy for it. And so that's a reimbursable event. And then what happens is instead of getting that appointment scheduled in 3 months, you could probably do it in 7 to 10 days. And so those are all these other things in the tool chest. Now, what the patient uses at home are an array of customized guided meditations related to the type of pain you might have, and then also anxiety, sleep, depression, what have you not. It's free to the patients to use. And what we found is with results of this, if patients use mindfulness as little as 10 minutes a day for 3 times a week, and what we found in studies of 3,000 patients for a minimum of 5 weeks, we found that we saw a 14% reduction in their opiate prescriptions. We saw 18% reduction in emergency room visits, and then 31% of the patients had a reduction in their pain intensity by 1/3 or greater. Usually pain is scored from 1 to 10. Sometimes the doctor will ask. So if you're at a 9, it drops to a 6. So as far as the revenue model is charged, we basically charge a software as a service to physicians, and think AWS, where if they want additional services, they'll pay extra $100 a month. We start at like $500 to $700 a month and then ramp up accordingly. And it's per physician or provider. And then the physician themselves can generate usually 3 to 4 times that revenue. And then at the same time, if they're doing these outpatient procedures, then it's a multiple fold of that. And then on top of that, what we're doing with WellBrain is we're providing a longitudinal history for the physician to track. Now, it's interesting enough, this acts as like an insurance policy. In California, there's this thing called the California Death Certificate, where they've passed a law where if any physician has prescribed an opiate and there's an opiate-related death in the state of California, they'll hold that physician responsible. So the physician has to produce this type of evidence, and we do that easily.
Perfect.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, I think it's great that, regardless of how that someone's being held accountable.
Well, and you love it when the government kind of mandates that people need to use your product. That's
Dude,
good for you.
Now, speaking of use of your product, you've got users in 17 states and about 150 physicians working with you.
Mm-hmm.
So what stage do you consider this to be at? I mean, I know early is still okay, but you have something that's clearly out in the market.
Right. I would say we're late early stage, moving into almost Series A. We're doing about $18,000 a month in recurring revenue, and we could easily triple that or quadruple that, and that's what I've seen as the baseline for some of our sister portfolio companies in getting their Series A. So we're almost there. And as far as states, it's we haven't targeted any specific states. With the exception of being in California, we can reach out to California much better. But we've had inbound interest throughout the country. And then specifically, what's more interesting is our iPad app has become a moat, and all these other types of solutions want to get in. And the physicians, our long-term vision is to offer all types of services, whether it be Tai Chi or you name it, diet, and then AR and VR. So they will plug into our platform, and then the physicians can choose from this array. And then we're going to tie it into electronic health records of patients, and then eventually become a kind of a deep learning recommendation engine by looking at patient outcomes across the country with various type of treatment. And the long-term vision is basically to be, let's say a woman age 35 with neck pain gets recommended a program saying 2 months of physical therapy, 3 months of mindfulness, and then maybe 20% of them get peripheral nerve stimulation, and then we'll see an 88% success rate. So it takes the guesswork out of the physician because we'll have all this data that we're capturing, and that's the long-term vision of WellBrain.
So how does this relate to like chiropractic care?
That's an interesting question. I guess chiropractic care could be an adjunct. So in the sense that
somebody comes in and I have neck pain, and go to the chiropractor.
Well, we're open to saying, so what we're doing now, there's a company called Kaya Health that's looking to work with us. They've been successfully in the German market with back pain, and they're doing a digital therapeutic for that, and they want to be inserted in our system. So similarly, if there's a chiropractic type of solution that's evidence-based, we could incorporate it into the platform. So we have about 15, 20 physicians evaluating all different types of solutions. And as we expand, we can add those solutions into the iPad. Because what I've learned is actually from the gaming industry, when we started developing video games, it was like develop the game, but then we had to develop the chat system, the payment system, all these components around it. And similarly here, that's what's happening with WellBrain. It's like, oh, we built this point solution on customized guided meditations, but we can be much more powerful than that, but we're not going to be an expert in developing an AR, VR solution, though there's a lot of interest in our pain doctors, but we don't know which one to work with because there's 10 or 12 of them. But we own this distribution channel of working with providers. So it could be.
But overall, your solution, I mean, I know Matt had, so chiropractors don't write prescriptions.
No.
So, right. But with that, pain is pain. Yeah. I know that's pretty general statement there, but the whole, so whether it's your foot, your knee, your leg, your neck, whatever, WellBrain is kind of pain agnostic in that regard, meaning like it's about, because I'm hearing a lot of holistic stuff in here, meaning just like the mindfulness, and by the way, a lot of that stuff is, these solutions for things, pain is such an interesting thing because it's difficult to diagnose.
Yeah, my face gives you pain.
Yeah. Right. Oh, you don't even want me to list all the things that give me pain.
Yeah. Pain is very subjective and some of the aspects is holistic, but But
it's hard to diagnose. So my brother-in-law and sister are both doctors. My sister's an anesthesiologist. My brother-in-law is an ER doctor. And, a lot of these people, we've created this whole like massive economy of junkies, basically, these opioid addicts. Mm-hmm. And dude, that shit gets a grip on people, man. Like you want to talk about lie, cheat, or steal. They will do it. And people come in. And that's the thing is, so there's a couple of things like back pain and tooth pain are very difficult to diagnose.
Right.
So they'll come in and they'll be like, my back hurts. And you can't necessarily just take an x-ray always and go, oh, well, you've got a problem there. So, is that some of the stuff you're attempting to monitor too?
Well, yeah. So there's a definite chronic pain is any pain that lasts 3 months or longer. But what we're trying to do is there's a couple of concepts. There's this concept called neuroplasticity. So this is a little more on the holistic side. But if you think of positive thoughts and emotion and deep breathing, there has been some evidence showing that your brain has the ability to rewire itself. As it's rewiring itself, you are alleviating some aspect of pain. If you look at soldiers that come back from the war, they have this phantom limb syndrome. And that's pure evidence that the pain is emanating from the brain. So what we're trying to do is minimize that. Now, some of the scientific stuff that we're working with purely is a lot of these medical device companies that are on our platform where they have the neurostimulation and there the science is pretty clear cut out how well it works. So some of it's holistic and then some of it is like actual clinical trial driven and FDA driven. We don't get into that, but with our partners we do. So
you talk about the measuring thing, measurable brain waves or different stuff like that. If you're in severe pain, that should be detectable, right? Yeah.
So it's interesting. We have a biofeedback mechanism and we've incorporated. So not only do we have third-party solutions, but we have like a single lead EEG headset.
That looks like something we should strap onto Watson.
Yeah.
And it measures your alpha and beta.
I like strap-ons. Those looks cool.
Yeah. And it measures your alpha, beta, and theta waves. And what we see right now, we're going to publish some science on it, but when you're in chronic pain, it's very jagged. And if you look at monks, it's a very smooth curve. And we have this score from 0 to 100%. And this is where the gamification comes in. What we've seen with patients, if they've practiced meditation over time and with their chronic pain state, that jagged curve gets smoother and smoother. Now, we need more evidence to publish the clinical science behind it. But that is an indicator that some of the doctors are using to say, hey, this is working. So you can really kind of diagnose that type of pain. There's other types of things you can derive from. It's pretty cool called heart rate variability. And we were going to incorporate a device, but we just found a company in California that can do it using pulse oximetry from the light of your phone. You can measure the oxygen level in your finger and you can derive some type of, pain, if you will, score from that. And then again, sometimes some of our patients say, hey, can I show my score to other people and compete? So there's some of that going on. We haven't built that in, but that's some of the
So I can compete with Matt about who's in the most pain.
or who has a more stable mind.
Oh, wow.
Dude,
So my dad has chronic pain,
Uh-huh.
and he could probably benefit from a lot of these things.
Yeah.
I keep telling him it's just old man problems, but
No.
But dude, the struggle's real, man. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, there's things that, and that's the thing that's challenging with opioids. And I mentioned in an episode when you weren't here, we had one of your other health tech cohorts in here, and a lady in our neighborhood went in for a tooth surgery like 15 years ago, and they cracked her tooth and did something to the nerve, and they gave her painkillers, and they just freaking ruined her life after that.
Yep.
And like the thing that's crazy is like people go in, they aren't trying to become addicted to opioids,
Right.
and they don't want to be in pain, but that stuff is like these things that are highly addictive. It's problematic, man. It's like, it really is. And there's like a whole, I don't know. I think it's kind of interesting that they're starting to hold these pharmaceutical companies accountable. There have been some judgments in some states for billions.
Yep.
Billions. And if you look at the precedent that's setting, I'd be freaked out if I was big pharma, because a lot of this stuff is very irresponsible in many ways. Like, you didn't need OxyContin because you had a bad day.
Yep.
Right. Or something. I mean,
I did.
You didn't, dude. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just telling you, like,
Here's the interesting story. So these compounds, like OxyContin and what have you not, they are 50 to 125 times more addicting than heroin.
yeah.
Oh, geez.
So,
Yes.
and the standard of care in Europe, like Germany, Denmark, and Australia, usually post-surgery, is usually 3 days worth of painkillers.
That's enough.
And here in the U.S., now they're changing it, but one of the unintended consequences of the Affordable Care Act was the quality scores based on surgery that happens in the hospital. That's how most people have gotten addicted. They go into the surgery, a kid with football injury gets a shoulder surgery, whatever. As they get discharged, you get a 30-day supply. What's been known.
That's like giving someone 3 cartons of cigarettes and being like, hey, I hope you don't get hooked.
And some of the science has shown if you're male, you'll be addicted within 13 days, and 17 days, and if you're female, 13 days.
And I don't even think it takes that long for some people.
Right.
Because here's another thing too: is addiction is more than just physical dependency.
Yep.
Because some people get a taste of that,
Right.
and they're like, "Man, I like this. I
Oh,
feel
yeah.
better." Because they might have, and that's what I actually like about WellBrain's approach. Because I think a lot of the issues that people medicate for when you talk about pain are not necessarily all related to whatever's causing the pain. You talk about things that are reducing anxiety. Like anxiety is the first step on the way to craving of sorts. Like people that are quitting, like I used to smoke cigarettes a long time ago and I quit. And the thing the hardest part about quitting was the freaking anxiety. Do you want to choke someone? And, and that's the same feeling of dependency that, these folks, and then the physical part, like people that get addicted to opioids and all that stuff, they get physically sick, like throwing up, like messed up, and they want to just fix that. And that's
if they don't take it.
Yeah. And
Wow.
that's what, and that's the thing is like, legitimately the things that we are often prescribing to people are like, if you went to the doctor and I was like, hey, Matt, I know your knee hurts, so I'm going to give you some smack. I'm going to give you some heroin here. Now I want you to go ahead and take this every day for a couple weeks and then call me back. Would that sound logical to you?
Yeah.
It would.
Yeah.
It wouldn't.
No?
No. Hell no. It's the same thing. It'd be like,
Right.
Sumeet, I'm going to give you some opium and here's a pipe and I'm going to teach you how to smoke it. And in a couple weeks, come back and tell me how things are going. But that's a similar
what happens.
concept. Yeah.
You're high as a kite, and then you give them a score 10 out of 10, then the hospital gets fully reimbursed and they get paid for
and then
their
on
surgery.
the flip side, like was in the Philippines where like none of the women get epidurals.
Yeah, man. Yep. Yeah. No, by the way, when Jill had
those ladies still have babies.
But there's issues too. Like when Jill got an epidural when our first child was born, and they kind of messed it up, And afterward, she had like a lot of back problems and weird stuff like that. And that's that precursor to a lot of this stuff.
Right.
Part of the issue is with doctors though. And I like that trail of accountability, because doctors, here's the thing, is you have all these different doctors and they all have a different opinion on how, when, what, and why. And, some doctors legitimately believe if someone's in pain and I can do something to help treat that, that is the right solution.
Correct.
And the problem is now they've created, and then some doctors don't give a shit. They're like, oh, wait, you'll come back every month and drive my revenue up. And it's like, wow.
Well, did they change any of the laws or kind of standard of care around like how many days you get, or talking about like ACA changes, things like that?
Right. So the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, they've mandated now, and also the Joint Commission, which is an accreditation organization for all the hospitals, they've mandated now that prior to any surgery, the physician or the staff has to discuss with the patient other forms of treatment except opiates. So at least they're aware and they can cover for it. So the good news is WellBrain is in a good spot for that, because this is an easy solution to say, hey, there are several different forms of other types of things you can consider in lieu of opiates, or maybe you only need the 2-day supply as opposed to the 30-day supply. So that is a good effect from that. So now it's cascading down. The behavioral health components of it, there's some interesting thing that the CDC has pushed, where it's very interesting for pain providers. What used to be treated in hospitals is now being offered to pain providers, where you can track the behavioral health of a patient, and there's all these codes for that. So there's some changes. It's coming good, and it's really interesting. The federal government is actually much more proactive on this, and it's interesting. The private insurance companies are a little bit slow to adopt to it. So there's these things called Medicare, right? And Medicare reimburses faster in some cases than the privates, because the privates haven't updated their internal thing. And privates meaning like your regular Aetna or those type of insurance companies. But so there are changes come along the way. And I think on both sides from a bipartisan effort, there have been several initiatives addressing, I forgot the act specifically, but funding for opiate related aspects,
Yeah, that struggle's real.
Yeah.
For those of you listening, go to wellbrain.io. You can learn all about what WellBrain does. And then Matt, something happened while you were gone.
Really?
We are on TikTok now.
What?
Yeah. And you can find us at TikTok, TikTok.
Like every episode or what?
No, you can't do that on TikTok.
Well, then what's on TikTok?
It's like Vine.
Yeah.
It's like you get like 20 seconds.
So it's just us
it's the Chinese
with a money gun or something?
Yeah, something. Yeah.
Okay.
You should go check it out. There's already some videos of you. Maybe
I may spend like an hour on there on mindless shit.
You can go. Is
that part of WellBrain, like pain relief, like wasting an hour on TikTok?
The thing that I've found is that, and I have yet to prove this clinically, but there's a high likelihood that you will be in pain after visiting the Startup Hustle TikTok page, but that's /at Startup Hustle. So yeah, we're there. And if you want to see pictures from today, you can go to the gram at Startup Hustle Podcast.
Okay.
And there's always, this is where we can accentuate our own beauty. Yeah.
I need to start using more of those filters.
I was going to say, I've never met a camera that liked me.
Did you see the pictures of me wearing makeup?
Yeah, I don't want to talk about it.
Okay.
Is TikTok popular with your staff in the Philippines?
We have had an account for about 2 days, so I do not know yet. Yes. And we will not post those other pictures.
Why not? They might be really popular. You're just worried I might be prettier than you.
No, I'm not. I've given up on beauty. It's really funny.
We can tell.
You remember the show Married with Children?
Yep.
You know, and Al Bundy always, I'm married with children. Yeah. And like, I think I've fully entered that phase of my life. I'm just like, yeah, I've said that recently. I'm like, I'm married I'm 44 years old. I got 2 kids. You mentioned earlier, you're like, are you working on your dad bod? Kind of. I mean, kind of.
Yep.
I just want to be able to fit into my full array of full scale shirts that all look exactly the same that I'm not wearing today.
Yeah.
I'm sporting the Code Blooded Killer
Yeah,
shirt
you got
from
your
Stackify. Yeah,
Wow.
I guess we should
Stackify.
probably mention that. You own a business too, right?
I do.
Stackify.com.
I do, yeah.
You guys do stuff and
We do.
things, right?
We do.
That's good,
Application performance monitoring for other software companies.
Oh, wow.
Oh, okay.
That's probably a good thing.
Companies like WellBrain.
We can
okay.
actually like save money and like find problems easier and like do clever stuff.
Everybody's code sucks and has performance problems. So
Yeah. I was trying to upload this podcast feed just to see what our app score was, and it wasn't working. How do I install Stackify and the podcast server?
I don't think it works that way.
Oh, I don't think-
Coding for optimization. Yeah. Right.
yeah, about that.
Yeah.
So, well, anyway, so as far as like, so I know you alluded to some of this earlier, but what do you really see? Like what's in the immediate future for WellBrain, and like how are you going to parlay the new relationship with Newterra Capital and all that? Like, what do you see being able to come down the pipe?
So what we see, what is really exciting is we're trying to incorporate a telepsych solution, and it may not sound too complicated, but there's a lot of solutions out there that have a network of psychiatrists, but not too many have a network of psychologists. And what this is with respect to chronic pain, there's more push to, like you said earlier, to take a look at the comprehensive view of the patient from, the mental anxiety and those aspects. And sometimes what we track in our WellBrain, what's exciting about this is sometimes if a patient strides high for severe depression, then it's beyond the rubric of that pain physician and they have to get a psychologist involved. However, if you're the patient under insurance, most psychologists in the country do not take insurance. So then there's a roadblock. And then if you're in a rural area, you have to drive 200 miles to get that. So now there's some reimbursable events for telepsych, and we're going to look to build that. And Newterra is going to help us partner with some companies that they've identified. So we're really excited about that. We're looking forward to starting development of that probably next quarter or in the next 2 quarters. But that'll be a game changer in solving a last mile issue for some of the things that we're trying to do with all the companies that we're working with. Like I mentioned,
that's a real issue in all forms of medicine. Yeah. So, and I became aware of that as my sister graduated from medical school. And so you look at, we're here in Kansas, and really Kansas is like Kansas City, and then it's a bunch of cornfields and wheat and whatever the hell they're growing out there. Yeah. But you look at some of these like Western Kansas states that are literally like as rural as you can get, and they won't have a doctor in the town.
Right.
So these towns will create contracts and literally over 5 years or something like that, pay off a newly graduated doctor's student loan in agreement for them to come exist there in the community. And that telemedicine, as you referred to it, and that's a real thing, is something that is becoming a lot more attainable as people everywhere are getting bandwidth that matters.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the big things when Google Fiber first came to Kansas City. That was. Do you remember them talking about that? Like the fact that like telemedicine, because of the gigabit internet, would be able to. They could just have like a higher definition. It would potentially open up medical options for.
There's a guy in my neighborhood that's an X-ray tech, and he works from home and services like emergency rooms across different great places.
Example, yeah.
And so when they need somebody to review an X-ray, he's just sitting at home. In his basement. It looks like a freaking command center down there with all this computers, but he actually uses Google Fiber.
Yeah.
And just stares at X-rays out of his home. Yeah.
And then other things too, as you just mentioned, like that, you look at 10 years ago and like some grainy ass video where you couldn't see anything. And now it's like, do you want 4K?
Right.
And that makes a big difference for a doctor, because the sight, being able to see something and just being like, yeah, man, my leg hurts.
Yep.
Okay, well, it might hurt because half of it's missing. Yeah, you might be able to see that in grainy video too. So, well, Sumeet, thanks for coming in.
Yeah.
I really find this to be fascinating. I'm excited that you're working with Newterra. I've been really impressed with them. As I mentioned, I've known Jeremy for a while, and I know that they're excited to be working with companies like you guys. I'm really a huge fan of what LaunchKC is doing. You can go to launchkc.org and check out, they're going to put out like 6 different verticals. They're going to help 36 companies get funded create top level partners. It's significant, and we are the official development partner of Launch KC, so we like that too. But
absolutely.
and I'm looking forward to seeing the demo that you're going to throw down by the time this comes out. That will be your demo today was amazing. Speaking past tense, we like to close our episodes by doing a what we call Founders Freestyle.
Okay.
So we just kind of give you the mic for a minute, and whether you left something unresolved, regardless of what you want to say, the mic is yours.
All right. Well, I'd like to leave a message for all listeners for this. Like a couple things I found is one is if you get a surgery or know a loved one's getting a surgery, challenge your providers or physicians. Don't take the 30-day supply. Don't take all the opiate prescriptions. Minimize it to 2 to 3. And then the second thing, what I found from the science, the benefits of mindfulness and just meditation is phenomenal for everyone in the sense that now they've shown studies from Harvard and MIT where 50 metabolic functions improve from your microbiome and the chemicals that they secrete. So overall, it's just a win-win for anyone out there just to practice even just a little bit of deep breathing. We don't do often enough of that. We're just always running around, but just take the time, maybe just even 5 minutes a day as part of your workout routine, and it will improve your life no matter what condition you're in.
Interesting. Well, I love what you guys are doing, and big fans of especially anything that can help people's outcomes and getting them off opiates and all that stuff. I think it's really cool, and it's amazing how technology plays a role. And it seems like you guys are kind of in the right place at the right time now with, like talking about the state of California trying to mandate, proof of why people were given the prescriptions, all that stuff. So I wish you guys all the best luck.
Yep. All right. Thank you.
And before I shut this down, once again, today's episode of Startup Hustle is brought to you by Fullscale.io. Make sure to go check out WellBrain at wellbrain.io. You guys have apps in the App Store?
Yep.
Are those publicly available?
They will be publicly available. Right now, you can download it on the iPad and then the iOS and Android. Right now, we make it accessible through the physician, but if anyone wants to contact me, I'm more than happy to send them a link, Sumeet at wellbrain.io.
I think in the future, will it work without a physician?
Yeah. We're going to make it publicly available. Right now, we ask patients we get a lot of inbound traffic. We just don't have the resources to make it fully open to B2C, but I want to open it up to everyone and give access to it.
I think for my freestyle moment here, I'm going to encourage people to embrace what we have referred to as mindfulness exercises. I mean, it's very, with 5 minutes of, if you wrap your arms around that a little bit, you can clear your head in like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, you can, and sometimes, and that's really applicable for a lot of different things, especially for entrepreneurs, because there's a lot of negativity and failure. And like, if you can just, on some ways, hit a little bit of a reset button and kind of get back into a positive mindset, you can get a lot done. I mean, what's already happened has happened.
What we do with patients, just start with 2 minutes, then 3 minutes, and build up from there. And then don't think of it at 5 minutes as something forever. Yeah.
And as Buddhists will say, it's kind of funny that when it comes to meditation, they say it's really easy. Just sit.
Yeah.
And I learned that a long time ago, but it means turn everything off. Like try it.
Yeah.
Just like try it. And it's really, it's very interesting. I think it takes more than 5 minutes actually, because I think it takes about 15, 20 minutes to kind of quiet your own mind. And then you might be really surprised at like some of the clarity and different stuff that comes up, but turn everything off. Right. I mean, all literally screens. Everything, anything that makes any kind of noise, the quieter, the better. So with that, I'm going to be quiet myself.
Now, hold on. I'm going to go. Wait. Can I go do my deep breathing while I watch the TikTok videos?
Well, we're going to, I'm going to make a TikTok video of you deep breathing. So I can make sure, I can make sure we get, so I make sure we have something that won't get any likes.
Okay, perfect.
Hey, here's a 20-second video of a guy breathing. Seems like a good way to build a following. Right. See y'all next time.